Things that are 250 grams. A bar of soap. A hamster. Even a can of soup. But you know what else is 250 grams? The exemption rule that the FAA has imposed regarding remote ID requirements here in the USA. Now that 250 number seems to be pretty popular all around the world as that magical cutoff number between having to register your drone or not having to register. And when I think back and look at all the quads and drones that I have built here, easily my favorite is that 5-inch setup. I don't know what it is about it. It's just something about that size and weight that just feels really good to fly, which means that most of my favorite builds is going to be impacted in the near future. So if 250 grams is all we're going to have to work with in the foreseeable future, I want to get started on figuring out what this 250 gram build is going to look like. Because, you know, like if you've been in this hobby long enough, you know that it takes a little bit of time to hone in on what the magical formula is on a great flying setup. So I want to take you guys on a journey with me as I figure out what is the best possible flying 5-inch freestyle experience that you could possibly get, all while hitting this 250 gram rule. And I wanted to share with you guys my approach on this because it's a little bit different from what I've done in the past and definitely different from what I see a lot of other people doing in this industry. You see, other people are going on the complete opposite end and basically just trying to make the lightest thing that flies like possible. I actually want to come from the other end and make use of as much of that 250 grams as possible. I'm coming from the freestyle background and I actually like having a little bit of weight and mass to throw around. It just makes for a different flying experience that I feel like is a lot smoother and just there's just something more satisfying about being able to throw something around. It's kind of like throwing a ping pong ball versus a golf ball. Maybe you're a bowler and you just like to throw a heavier ball. Oh my gosh, I can see that one. I can see the memes and jokes coming in on that one. So let's break this down. When we think about a typical 5-inch build, the three things that weigh the most is going to be your battery, followed by your set of motors, and then finally your frame. Cute frame, huh? So here's how I'm looking at this, right? We basically have to make this build and we have to make it fit within this 250 gram constraint. And that's what this triangle represents. Now I understand there's also the flight controller, the FPV components, and all of that stuff. But at the end of the day, these are the three things that weigh the most. And so these are the three things that we have to focus on. If you're prioritizing absolute power, let's say you want to build a race setup. You want to get the biggest motor so that you got that all-out power, which means that you're probably going to have to compensate on the frame. You're going to have to go with something nice and lightweight. It's probably not as durable. And then that means if we're moving up to this area, you're also going to have a smaller battery here. Now, if I'm being realistic, if you're really building a race setup, you can't really just go all the way here because you need the power to kind of back that up. So maybe you're kind of here, which means you've got a bigger motor, you've got a bigger battery to back it up, but you still have a lightweight frame. Because at the end of the day, if you're racing, maybe durability isn't as big of a concern. Now, maybe we're trying to build a long range setup, which means you'd probably be more biased towards having a bigger battery. So you're probably still going to have a lightweight frame because, again, durability is probably not a concern. And because you're going for long range maximum flight time, you probably don't need some big, beefy, powerful motors. And so something small will probably do. Now, for what I'm trying to do in building this freestyle frame, I'm trying to actually go somewhere like right around here, right? Just a little bit biased towards having a nice, good power setup. I also want the frame to be durable enough for my freestyle needs, which means that the battery is what's going to be compromised. So what this means is I have to start my journey here. I have to figure out what size motor I can get away with to spin up a 5-inch prop and a target of 250 grams. Down at the bottom, we got the all-up weight, where the farther right you go, the heavier things get. Over here to the left, I want to direct your attention to the super scientific icon, otherwise known as a happy face. This is where you want to be, fellas. because up here in this upper area is where you're going to get great control and great handling. What I'm talking about is if you're up here, you've got a power setup for your all-up weight that'll allow you to be agile. Maybe you need to come out of a dive at the very last second. Being up here is what's going to get you that goal. So obviously, you don't want to be down here, fellas, because down here, yeah, it might fly, but maybe the handling gets compromised because, you know, you take a hard turn, but it's too heavy for the power setup, and so you start drifting in the corner. So basically, depending on who you are, especially if we're trying to do a freestyle setup, guys, we don't want to be down here. So here's what happens. Maybe you buy an RTF, it's a little 2.5 inch, and so that whole power setup feels really good for that all-up weight. But maybe you start upgrading things, maybe you get a more durable frame, maybe you get a bigger camera or VTX, and as things get heavier, this happiness meter starts to get compromised. You start to go down, fellas. Maybe you graduate and you're like, now I want to fly with the GoPro, so now you're like somewhere down here. So you can see, you ain't happy, fellas. So what's the answer? More power. Now, for the purposes of what we're talking about here, I'm gonna say more power is directly related to a bigger motor. Now, I totally get it, fellas. You can increase voltage, you can get a higher KV, you can get a more aggressive pitch prop to increase power. But for our intensive purposes, just to keep this simple, what we're talking about is getting a bigger motor. And when you get to a bigger motor, well, now what this does is it brings you back up into your happy spot. So what does this mean for us? Well, we know that 250 grams, we'll just say it's somewhere like over here, is where we need to be. So what this tells me is that I really don't need a whole lot of power, which means I could probably get away with a smaller size motor. But it doesn't stop there, because the next important part is the prop. So when you think about how a drone flies in the air, you basically got a motor and prop on all four corners. And each of these motors is spinning up and slowing down to basically stabilize your drone. And if you have a motor with an oversized prop, basically to the point where it can't spin this up or slow it down fast enough, what you get is a flying characteristic that just really doesn't feel stable. Maybe it's a little bit wobbly and basically unresponsive. On the flip side, you step up your motor and make sure that your motor can properly control a prop, then the flying characteristic is a lot more stable over on this side, and it's a lot more responsive. So it's not like flying like it's drunk. It's just very well controlled, and it's basically just sticking to whatever stick inputs you're giving it. So here's what that chart basically looks like in my experience. Over on this side, you've got a bigger motor up top, and you got a smaller motor at the bottom, and that curve just kind of looks like this until finally it just kind of levels off. Oh, I forgot to mention that. We're assuming the same prop. Somewhere there's a window where it's flying stable and responsive. Anything outside of here is where you don't want, and after a certain point here, there's the law of diminishing returns where you could go with the bigger motor, but you're not going to gain that much more response or stability. In fact, you might just lose on efficiency. Now, I know from previous experience that the 1806 motor is somewhere in this window where it works well for a 5-inch prop. The question though is how far this way can I go? How much smaller can I get before I end up on this side, where I definitely do not want to be? So the next thing I did was basically look through all of my old boxes, basically looking for the next smallest motor from the 1806. And that actually ended up being this guy. This is a 1606 motor. The next thing I did was look for the lightest 5-inch prop that I had, and that ended up being this GemFan 5030. Does anybody remember the GemFan 5030? Because if you do, kudos to you, man. This thing was like a screamer, man. It sounded like you were going so fast, but you weren't. And what I found was that, I felt like it was able to control this prop. Although there was some parts where lower in the throttle end and higher up in the throttle end where I felt like maybe it could be debatable. I felt like maybe it was on that really fine line where some people will be like, yeah, that's cool, I think it swings that prop fine, while others might be like, nah, I think I just want a little bit more. I feel like it's not quite there. And for me, that's not good enough. Now I need to feel confident that this is going to be good, you know, throughout the range. So I hit up my motor manufacturer, basically explaining what I was looking for. And before I could even finish, you know, throwing out like a suggestion, the guys basically told me like, hey, look, this is perfect timing because we actually just finished a new 2004 stator design. And at the time, 24 hadn't existed yet, and it was just something that, you know, they were basically kind of guessing that should work. And I had to sit there and think about it. I'm like, man, is this going to be enough? Now, how do you make a decision based off something like that? Well, here's what I thought. Basically, you can try and calculate a motor stator volume, which is basically looking up, you know, the volume of a cylinder. And that way you can have a finite number instead of just going off of like 1606 versus 2004. Like, what does that all mean? So here we go. The 1606 basically works out to a radius of 8, and it's got a height of 6. And we get a total volume here of 1206.37. So when I do the same calculations for the 2004, which has a radius of 10 and a slightly smaller height of 4, we have 1256.64. Oh, I mean, that is like really close. It's only like about 50 in volume more. So basically, compared to a 1606, we're going up to 20, so it's a lot wider in stator size, and then dropping down by 2 in height. Now maybe this will work, because in my experience, going with a wider stator usually gives a lot more torque control, and maybe that's just the bit that we need. So I decided to go for it, decided to try it. Now the first thing I did was go call up HQ, and I told them, hey look, I kind of committed myself to this 2004 motor size, and my goal is for it to swing this 5-inch prop. And basically I need you guys to make me the lightest 5-inch prop that you got. And before I could even finish there, Zong was like, oh dude, I got you covered. We've actually already made it. We made a 5-inch T-mount prop. In fact, I've already sent it to you for testing. You should be getting it in a couple of days. Now when it comes to designing a motor bell, it's probably no secret by now that I like to design my stuff after wheels. And after I sent my favorite wheel design to the manufacturer, then we had to hash out a couple of design briefs. Basically, I told them this needs to be as light as possible. I do want the aluminum housing to be made out of 7075 so that it's got some durability. And because of this 2004 size, it allowed me to get away with a thicker 3mm shaft and the biggest bearing that go along with that stator and shaft side. So all of this should attribute to a smoother and more durable flying experience. And when all is said was done, the first draft of the design came back, and according to their CAD software, it was going to be around 15.8 grams. And I thought, alright, that's not bad. I mean, that's a pretty lightweight motor. But I was still, not gonna lie, concerned about whether or not it was going to be torquey enough to swing a 5-inch prop. And so I started thinking to myself, like, oh, what else can I really do? You know, I can't really do anything else with the prop. HQ already made it, so it's not like I can say make it lighter. I don't even know if it's going to be light enough to begin with. And then it dawned on me, right? See, the bell housing and the prop is actually a lot like the wheel and the tire on a car. And if you look at race cars, they're trying to reduce the rotational mass. Duh, why don't we do some cutouts on the bell so that we can reduce the rotational mass, and therefore it's effectively like having a lighter prop. On top of that, I also said let's get rid of the 4 motor bolts and let's just go down to 2, because in my experience 2 motor bolts on the bigger 2306s have been perfectly fine for me. And so when that revision came back, now according to the CAD software, we were down to 13.8 grams. That is fantastic. So happy with those specs. I asked them to make me a couple of samples in a couple of different KVs for 4S, and I also wanted to make a 6S version. Now with the motor specs locked, it's pretty much a waiting game. And that wait ended up being about 28 days, I want to say. It was pretty much like almost a month. But when I first saw these motors, I was like, I'm motor rich. So I grabbed my Wii-Mix just so that I can grab the flight controller stack out of there so I can quickly throw on a set of these motors so I can find out that I make the right decision.
Basically, this is how all of my flights look like. No matter what I did with the PIDs or the filtering, it just flew like this. It was wobbly, unstable, but it had a lot of power. I was stumped.
So this kind of worried me a little bit. Did I make the wrong decision? Was I wrong? Is it wider is not more torque? This 2004 size is not just gonna do it? I'm for sure you guys heard that. All right, where was I? So I'm not gonna lie, this kind of worried me. I mean, the flying characteristics is kind of wobbly, but it had a lot of power, so it just kind of didn't make sense. Then it dawned on me. Okay, I mean, I basically took a frame and I modified it for something that it wasn't originally intended to be flown for. Maybe I'm getting frame resonation. You see, this frame was originally designed for 4-inch arms, and I basically replaced it and extended the arm to make it fit for a 5-inch. And when the arm is this thin, and what I've noticed in the past in doing frame design is that this can act like a tuning fork basically. And if this can twist this way, what that does is it creates frame resonation that ultimately goes to the flight controller. So I went out for another flight, basically turning on the black box function and enabling the debug function for gyro. This way I could record what was going on with the frame, hopefully try to put some answers as to why this thing was flying kind of wobbly and weird. So here's the results, and I think I actually might be right here. This right here looks kind of bad. And just to get a second opinion, I had Bardwell take a look. And he explained that the fact that this noise right here is the same frequency, regardless of the throttle input, is a huge indicator that what I was seeing was actually, in fact, frame resonance. Okay, I'll take this. I mean, this doesn't quite answer whether or not the 2004, this motor that I had spec'd together, can properly swing this 5-inch prop, but it definitely answers why it might be flying weird. So if now I can just eliminate this frame resonance issue, I might be able to get to my answer. But now what this meant was I needed to start on the frame development way sooner than I had anticipated. Brian, hey, what's up, man? Alright, so I was able to confirm that we are definitely getting frame resonation, and it's hopefully the reason why this thing is flying wobbly. But I won't know for sure until we eliminate the frame resonation, which basically means we're gonna have to start development on this frame like now. He's upset because I told him we didn't have to worry about this till later. Yeah, no, I know. I know, we have a lot to do. So basically went back and forth as I was explaining to him all the different things I was looking for on this particular frame build, when I had another epiphany. Yeah. Like, oh, wait. I got an idea. What if we take the Moon Goat, let's drill out the arms for 12 by 12 so I can mount those motors, and I can test it on that frame. I mean, we know that frame's pretty good with frame resonation. That should work. I mean, all we're trying to do is just answer the question about whether or not the 2004 motor is gonna handle this 5-inch prop, right? Yeah. I'm a genius. So I went to work drilling out new holes for those arms, threw those motors on there, and I went out for a flight. Oh, and by the way, in case you're wondering about the prop, yes, it did come in. This is it. This is the HQ 5x3 T-mount prop, little less than 2.5 grams. It actually came in right before these guys did. I just totally forgot to mention it. So now you're caught up.
Now this is what I was looking for. No more bounciness, no more wobbles. And these were just default PIDs. Didn't even touch the filtering. This is what I'm talking about. And it flew so smooth. This was the answer I was looking for.
This motor right here, spec'd out the way it is, swings this prop the way that I want it to. It's responsive, it's well controlled, it flies smooth, it's got some power. I freaking figured it out. So I immediately went to my laptop to go tell my manufacturer that this is good. And we went over different color schemes. We figured out which one I wanted for 6S, which one I wanted for 4S. And all was good, all up until he asked me this one question. I was so focused on solving this issue that I completely forgot that this new frame I was testing on weighed way more than 250 grams. Just do it. Just do it. Just do it. Hey Brian, hey! What's up? So, yeah, we still gotta get started on that frame design. I completely forgot that I still need to test the yaw up weight so that I can decide on the KV. Hey fellas, what's going on? Hopefully you enjoyed this video. Hopefully you like this style of video. I just wanted to share with you guys what I've been working on and in a fun kind of way. So if you did like it, hit that subscribe button. Definitely hit that like button, please, because this video took me a really long time to make. Now, if you've been following me on Instagram, you'll know that these motors actually already exist and that they are available. It's not how I wanted this to roll out. I actually wanted the whole build with the frame and the motors to all come out at the same time, but life just doesn't always pan out that way. And so I don't want to hold back, and I wanted to kind of release this now and just start telling the story about how I even got to this motor spec and KV build, just in case somebody out there wants to attempt a similar kind of build. Here's the colors for it. This is the 6S version for 1600 KV, if it can focus. This is like my favorite color scheme. And then for my 4S people, this is the colors that we went with that one, and this is 2400 KV. So stay tuned for the next video where I go into a couple more details on some minor changes, some more changes that we decided to go for before we went to production on these motors. And then obviously, you know, the whole struggle and logic that went behind designing the frame that these would go on. All right, fellas, I'm out. I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.